employer wants to keep you. You want to stay. The green card process has started, and for the first time in years, the future feels like it might actually be plannable. And then someone mentions Perm, and the timeline doubles. Perm labor certification is the mandatory first step for most employer-sponsored green cards. It is also one of the most misunderstood, most delayed, and most emotionally draining stages in the entire U.S. immigration process. Processing times have stretched to levels that are testing the patience of employers and employees alike, and audit rates remain high enough that even well-prepared cases can get caught off guard. In this video, we are going to walk through exactly how Perm works, why it takes so long, what triggers an audit, and the strategies that protect cases from unnecessary delay. Stay with us through every point. The final one is where most preventable failures occur. We've put the questions and timestamps on screen so you can jump to what matters most. Perm, which stands for Program Electronic Review Management, is the Department of Labor's process for certifying that there are no qualified, willing, and available U.S. workers for a specific position before an employer can sponsor a foreign worker for an employment-based green card in the EB2 or EB3 categories. The underlying principle is labor market protection. Before the U.S. government grants permanent residency to a foreign worker through an employer-sponsored pathway, the employer must demonstrate that they genuinely tested the labor market and found no qualified U.S. candidates for the role. That demonstration is what the Perm process is designed to produce. The process has several mandatory stages. First, the employer must obtain a prevailing wage determination from the Department of Labor, establishing the minimum salary that must be offered for the position. Second, the employer must conduct a genuine recruitment campaign, posting the job, advertising in required channels, and documenting the results over a defined period. Third, the employer must review all applications received, conduct interviews where appropriate, and document why any U.S. applicants were found not qualified for the specific role. Fourth, the employer files Form 9089, the Perm application, with the Department of Labor, attaching the full recruitment documentation. The Department of Labor then reviews the application and either certifies it, audits it, or denies it. Attorney Chris M. Ingram, founder of the law offices of Chris M. Ingram, is direct about what the current environment means for employers and employees. Perm labor certification is one of the most important and least forgiving steps in the employment-based green card process. The delays are real, the audits are demanding, and the consequences of errors are severe. Understanding how to navigate this process correctly from day one is not optional. It is the difference between a green card and years of avoidable delay.
Just a quick reminder, if you appreciate this kind of in-depth content, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us bring you more content. Now, on with the video.
I am still in the process, but so far my experience has been very positive. The firm is genuine, makes no false promises, and is always prompt and honest in communication. Stefania Perez is very helpful in clarifying doubts and leaving no loose ends. Krishna. I was more than happy and satisfied with the services. The team was very prompt and immediate with their responses and guidance. I had seldom experienced such professional and efficient services provided. I would like to especially call out Hannah Nixon, who has been a wonderful partner to work with, and she has been so quick on our requirements that we at times had a hard time catching up with how quick she was working through the stages. Kudos! You guys have been great! Abhishek. Those reviews represent employers and employees who successfully navigated this process. Now let us walk through how one journey actually worked.
Feeling lost in a maze of visa types and paperwork? Don't know where to turn? We've got your back. With clear answers and real help, we'll guide you every step of the way. Let's navigate it together. Your journey starts today.
Hello, you must be Clara. Welcome to the law office of Chris M. Ingram.
Finally, I found a law firm that will help me achieve my American dream.
At this law firm, you are important to us. That's why we will be with you every step of the way. So join us at the office of Chris M. Ingram.
James Whitfield grew up in Birmingham, the son of a secondary school headmaster and a nurse. He completed his degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Nottingham, then spent 7 years at a precision manufacturing company in the West Midlands, working his way up from graduate engineer to senior process engineer. His specialisation was advanced manufacturing systems for aerospace components, a field that sits at the intersection of materials science, robotics, and quality assurance at tolerances measured in fractions of a millimetre. In 2021, a US aerospace manufacturer with a facility in Wichita, Kansas, recruited James for a senior engineering role. The position required exactly his combination of expertise in composite material processing and automated quality inspection systems. He arrived on an H-1B visa in early 2022 with his wife Sophie and their infant daughter. The work was exactly what he had been recruited for. By the end of his first year, he had led a process improvement initiative that reduced component rejection rates by 18% across 2 production lines. His manager described him as one of the most technically capable engineers the facility had hired in a decade. In early 2023, the company's Immigration Council advised that it was time to begin the green card process. James's profile fit the EB2 category. His role required an advanced degree equivalent and specialised expertise that was genuinely difficult to source domestically. The Perm process began. The prevailing wage determination came back within expected timeframes. The recruitment campaign was conducted correctly, job postings on the required platforms, a 30-day job order with the state workforce agency, targeted outreach to professional networks. 14 applications were received from US candidates. Each was reviewed carefully. None met the specific technical requirements for the role, which required direct experience with composite aerostructure manufacturing at aerospace tolerance standards. Form 9089 was filed in mid-2023. What should have been a well-managed process became something else entirely. 14 months after filing, the Department of Labour issued an audit notice. The audit requested extensive additional documentation for every stage of the recruitment process, the specific qualifications used to evaluate each US applicant, the documentation of outreach efforts, and evidence that the prevailing wage determination accurately reflected the complexity of the role. The audit added 8 months to the timeline. During that period, James's H-1B renewal came due. His daughter started nursery school. Sophie, who had been working part-time on an H-4 employment authorization document, had to pause work while the H-4 renewal was processed in parallel. The uncertainty was not abstract. It touched every decision they made. Attorney Chris Ingram's team had been engaged from the beginning of the process. When the audit arrived, the response was precise and complete. Every document requested was provided in the format the Department of Labour required, with a cover letter that addressed each audit question, directly and preemptively answered follow-on questions before they were asked. The Perm was certified. The I-140 was filed and approved. James filed for adjustment of status. Sophie filed alongside him. Their daughter, born in the United Kingdom, was included as a derivative beneficiary. The process took 3 years from initiation to green card approval. It should have taken closer to half that time, but it was protected at every stage by preparation that anticipated the audit rather than reacting to it.
Let us now walk through the 5 most important things employers and H-1B workers need to understand about Perm. We are counting down from 5 to 1. The final point is where the most preventable failures occur. Number 5. How long does Perm actually take? Processing times have deteriorated significantly. Standard cases that were once approved in 6 to 8 months are now routinely taking 14 to 18 months or longer from the date of filing. Audited cases typically add a further 6 to 12 months on top of that, and in more severe cases can extend well beyond a year. Prevailing wage determinations, which are a prerequisite to filing, have their own processing backlogs running 2 to 4 months, which can add weeks or months before the clock on the main application even starts. The practical implication is that the Perm process should begin as early as possible in an H-1B worker's employment, ideally within the first 2 years, so that the green card timeline does not compress against the H-1B renewal cycle or the maximum stay provisions. Number 4. What triggers a Perm audit? audit rates remain consistently high. Current estimates put roughly 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 Perm filings under some form of audit, supervised recruitment, or additional review, and understanding what triggers them is the first line of defense. The most common audit triggers include a high number of U.S. applicants during the recruitment period, particularly if the documentation of why those applicants were found unqualified is not sufficiently detailed. Company layoffs in the same or similar occupational classification within the 6 months before filing are a major risk factor. Positions with job requirements that appear unusually narrow or tailored to the foreign worker's specific background attract scrutiny. Inconsistencies between the job description in the Perm application and the actual duties performed also trigger review. The best protection against an audit is a recruitment process that is genuinely and demonstrably conducted at arm's length, with detailed, consistent documentation of every step, every applicant reviewed, and every qualification standard applied uniformly. Number 3, do company layoffs kill a pending Perm case? This is one of the most anxiety-producing questions we hear from H-1B workers whose employers are going through restructuring. The honest answer is, they can. If the sponsoring employer laid off workers in the same or a related occupational classification within the 6 months preceding the filing date, the Department of Labor requires the employer to notify and consider those workers before proceeding. If that step was skipped, the Department of Labor may conclude that qualified U.S. workers were available and that the labor market test was not genuinely conducted. This can lead to denial or forced withdrawal of the application. The risk is not automatic. It depends on the timing, the specific occupational classification, and the geographic area involved. But it is real, and it is why monitoring the employer's workforce situation throughout the Perm process is part of sound immigration strategy. Number 2, how do you protect a Perm application from audit risk? Protection begins before the application is filed. The job description must accurately reflect the genuine requirements of the role without appearing tailored to a specific individual. The prevailing wage determination must be obtained for the correct job zone and SOC code. The recruitment must be conducted with genuine outreach, not minimum compliance, and every step must be documented in real time, not reconstructed after the fact. Attorney Chris M. Ingram is specific on this point. The single most effective protection against a Perm audit is a recruitment process that was genuinely conducted and documented as if an audit was coming. Roughly 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 cases draws some form of audit or additional review. We build every Perm case with the audit response already drafted and outlined before the application is filed. Number 1, is Perm still worth pursuing? For most H-1B workers in employer-sponsored green card pathways, Perm remains the required first step. There is no alternative route through EB-2 or EB-3 employer sponsorship that bypasses it. The process is slow, the audit risk is real, and the consequences of errors are severe. But successfully completing Perm opens the door to I-140 approval and the eventual certainty of permanent residency. The strategic question is not whether to pursue Perm, but how to pursue it. With enough runway, enough documentation discipline, and enough legal preparation to absorb delays and audits without the timeline compressing against the H-1B clock. He concludes, Perm is not a process you want to approach minimally. The employers and employees who come through it cleanly are the ones who treated the documentation requirements as if every decision would be scrutinized, because eventually it will be.
Attorney Chris M. Ingram is often asked, my company is about to start my Perm process, but they have also announced layoffs in my department. Should I be worried? You are asking this because you are watching something happen around you, and you are not sure whether it threatens the process that is supposed to protect your future. His answer is direct. Layoffs in the same or similar occupational classification are a genuine audit trigger, and in some cases, a basis for denial. The timing matters enormously. The legal trigger is specifically layoffs within the 6 months before the filing date, and layoffs that occur during the recruitment window itself carry the highest risk. If your employer is going through restructuring, the right step is an immediate conversation with experienced immigration counsel about whether to proceed, pause, or restructure the approach. Do not wait to raise this question until after the application is filed. He is also asked, I am from India, and I know the EB2 and EB3 backlogs are severe. If my Perm gets certified and my I-140 gets approved, how long am I actually looking at before I get a green card? You are asking this because you have done the math and the numbers are alarming. His answer is honest. For Indian nationals in the EB2 and EB3 categories, the priority date backlog is measured in over a decade already and growing. The EB2 India category has been designated unavailable for the remainder of the fiscal year due to demand, and the EB3 India cutoff date sits around early 2014, meaning a case filed today could realistically face a wait measured in decades before a visa number becomes available. An approved I-140 establishes your priority date, but if the final action date for your category and country is many years behind, you will wait regardless of how well your Perm and I-140 were prepared. The strategic question for Indian nationals is whether the Perm and EB2 or EB3 pathway is the right long-term strategy at all, or whether the profile supports a self-petition pathway like the EB1A, which for most nationalities carries no meaningful backlog. The law offices of Chris M. Ingram assesses this question honestly for every Indian national client at the beginning of the engagement. One more question he hears regularly: can my employer start my Perm process before I have been with the company for a full year? You are asking this because you want to get the clock started as soon as possible, and you are not sure whether there is a waiting period. His answer is specific. There is no minimum employment period before a Perm application can be filed. An employer can begin the process, including obtaining the prevailing wage determination and preparing the recruitment at any point during the employment relationship. The practical consideration is that the job description must reflect the genuine, permanent requirements of the role, not a temporary assignment or training position. Starting early is generally advisable. He maps out the full Perm timeline for every client at the beginning of the engagement, so the process starts with enough runway to absorb whatever delays and complications arise.
If the Perm pathway is not viable because of employer layoffs, company instability, a role that does not meet the genuine recruitment standard, or a priority date backlog that makes the EB2 or EB3 categories impractical, there are pathways that keep the green card process moving on a different track. Pathway 1, for professionals whose individual record supports it, the EB1A Extraordinary Ability Green Card bypasses Perm entirely. No employer recruitment test, no Department of Labor involvement, no prevailing wage determination. The EB1A is a self-petition built around the individual's own achievements, publications, peer recognition, original contributions, critical roles in distinguished organizations, high salary relative to peers. For H-1B workers who have been quietly building a strong professional record while waiting for Perm to move, the EB1A is worth a serious assessment. For most nationalities, the priority date is current, meaning no visa number wait at all. For Indian and Chinese nationals specifically, EB1 dates can and do move. They are not always current, but even when a modest backlog exists, it is typically measured in a small number of years, rather than the decade-plus waits seen in EB2 and EB3 India. Pathway 2, the EB2 National Interest Waiver. For professionals whose work serves a documented national priority, such as research, technology, medicine, clean energy, or national security, the NIW allows self-petition without employer sponsorship and without Perm. The individual achievement threshold is lower than the EB1A. For H-1B workers in federally prioritized fields who have a strong enough publication or contribution record, the NIW may be available now, even if the EB1A is not yet within reach. Assessing Perm alternatives honestly before committing years to a single pathway is part of sound immigration planning for any employer-sponsored case that faces uncertainty.
If your employer has started or is about to start your Perm process, the most important thing you can do is ensure the job description is accurate, specific, and genuinely reflects the requirements of the role, not the background of the person currently in it. The Department of Labor is looking for evidence that the requirements are real and that the recruitment was conducted genuinely. A job description that reads as if it was written around a specific individual's CV is an audit waiting to happen. Then ensure the recruitment documentation is being maintained in real time. Every posting date, every application received, every communication with every applicant, every evaluation conducted, documented as it happens, not reconstructed weeks later. An audit can arrive months after filing. The documentation from the recruitment period must be ready to produce immediately and completely. If you are an Indian national in an EB2 or EB3 employer-sponsored pathway and the priority date backlog is part of your planning, do not make the decision to proceed without first having an honest assessment of whether your profile supports a self-petition alternative. The Perm process is a significant investment of time, money, and employer goodwill. Investing it in a pathway that leads to a decades-long wait when a faster route exists is a mistake worth avoiding before it is made. The law offices of Chris M. Ingram is at breakthroughusa.com. The team advises both employers and employees on Perm strategy, audit response, and green card alternatives. Start the conversation before the clock runs out.
James's daughter is in primary school now. She has an American accent that surprises her grandparents in Birmingham on every video call. Sophie is back at work. The H-4 employment authorization document came through 6 weeks after the adjustment of status was approved. The 3 years it took to get from Perm initiation to green card approval were not wasted years. The work continued. The contributions continued. The family put down roots that are now deep enough that the word temporary no longer applies to any part of their lives here. But 3 years should have been closer to 18 months. The difference was an audit that arrived because the recruitment documentation, while adequate, was not built to absorb scrutiny. The response was strong enough to survive it. A better prepared submission might have avoided it entirely. Perm is not where green card dreams go to die. It is where green card dreams go to be tested. The ones that are prepared for the test come through it. If your Perm process is delayed, facing an audit, or hasn't started yet, don't wait to get experienced counsel in your corner. Reach out today and schedule a consultation to map out your timeline before the clock runs out.